Will, welcome to the show, mate.
Dodge, I feel very honoured. You've had some very prestigious guests, and to even be allowed to darken your doorstep is a privilege, sir.
Very much looking forward to this one, Will. Let's roll all the way back. Where did you grow up and how did you become an international bodyguard?
Well, where do we start? So I grew up in Kingston, just outside London. And I had a very interesting childhood. My mother and father separated and divorced when I was about 7. And it was not a great childhood. It was pretty horrible, to be absolutely fair. And then I was packed off to private school, as you can tell by my lovely accent.
Very posh.
To be honest, that's probably the only benefit that I got from it, because I certainly wasn't an academic by any stretch. But yeah, no, it was an interesting childhood. I have 2 siblings, and my mother was an alcoholic. My father was very authoritarian. So it was, it wasn't until much later in life when I actually spoke to someone about it and said, you know what, when I'm talking to friends about their memories of childhood, I don't have many. And why is that? And it's really weird. Either I've got, I'm just thick, and I have a very poor memory, or maybe there's something else. And I found out from a professional who said, when you've had a traumatic childhood, it's really not that surprising if you can't remember an awful lot of it. And that would explain a great deal. Anyway, as time progressed, they subsequently passed away.
How old were you when they passed?
Well, my father died when I was 17, which was quite a pivotal point for me in life, because that's where my direction really sort of span, and my wheels span, and I didn't really know what to do. And I was like that for a few years. But I was never one of these kids that sort of from the age of year dot went, I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a policeman, I want to be an accountant. All my friends were going, yeah, I know what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to university. And I never went to university. I wasn't academic at all. For many, many years, I found out later that I was dyslexic. But for many, many years, I thought I was just lazy because that was what I was told, because I wasn't engaged in much the curricula. So I wasn't an academic. And the funny thing about it is that I think, explaining it now, having been an instructor and being a teacher to often an unwilling audience, it was about how the curriculum was actually delivered. And many of the teachers, I literally just rolled it out. They didn't actually engage the children, didn't enthuse the children. And I think this is where it's so important that you just don't ride roughshod over a child and say they're lazy, they're not attentive. I would place the blame back at the teachers to say, are they doing a good enough job? Because certainly when I've got corporate clients and I'm doing training for them, if they don't switch on and they don't enjoy it and they don't get enthused and engaged, then I don't get it asked back.
Agree. Well, you think about dyslexia. Dyslexia when we were growing up, you were the wrong one in the corner. Everyone thought it was thick.
Yeah.
Now it's the coolest thing. Everyone's going, he's going to be the biggest entrepreneur and the most creative person I've ever met in my life. Dyslexia now is a cool thing.
Is it?
Yes,
I never
absolutely.
realised. I mean, it's a nightmare when I'm trying to write received. I always write that wrong.
Yeah.
Always write that wrong. And I'm always writing stuff wrong. Thank God
that's
for
okay.
keyboards.
That's okay, isn't it? Everyone's WhatsApping these days, so it doesn't really matter. Correct grammar and all sorts.
You don't want to see some of my autocorrects. They're not good.
So just rolling back there, you said your mum was an alcoholic. Did that play a big part in you becoming who you are today, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Without question. I used to get beaten by both. So even when they divorced, and especially when my end of term happened and I'd bring back this absolute abomination of a school report, I would anticipate whichever parent I went to first would give me a hiding. Yeah. Then I'd go a couple of weeks later to the second parent. Yeah. They'd look at it and give me a hiding. Yeah. And, and I was bullied at school. And, I think a lot of people, if you dug under the surface with a lot of protectors and a lot of people who come into the industry of security, I think they will have been people that will have been beaten up or had an abused childhood in some shape or form, and then have developed this inherent ability to want to protect others. Yeah. And that you have to have. If you don't have that in this industry, you're in the wrong game. Yeah. You should be going elsewhere. But what I think it also does develop, which I think is really, really useful, is this degree of intuition is the best way I can describe it. That you can read people's emotions pretty quickly, and you can read a room pretty quickly, because it was almost a survival skill when you were a child, and certainly when you were with a volatile alcoholic, and they'd smash you around the head with an ashtray or whatever. You would read that the mood change and the mood swings super quickly and start adapting accordingly. So I think intuition and conflict management are probably two skills that come from it.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. I grew up in a pub. And straight away, you know how people's mannerisms are. When people walk in a room, your third sense can sense them in the corner of your eye. You know what's happening in that room.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can, and it's that kind of instinctive thing. You sort of refine it, and it's saved my bacon numerous times, I have to say. And I mean, I'm not just talking about my ex-wives.
Yeah. I'm sure there's plenty of them.
I've weaned myself off the taste of wedding cake. Let's put it that way.
So tell me your journey then from sort of 18 onwards.
Well, I mean, to get me into the industry, we can sort of cycle back a little further. So I started, I'm now in my mid-50s. And
you're in good nick, by the way.
Thanks, buddy. That's really kind of you. Good surgeon. Not yet, but I won't discount it later.
There's no creases in that forehead,
there's plenty, mate. There's plenty. It's just good lighting, thanks to your studio. I started with judo, which was very common in the 70s.
That's right.
And there was none of this touchy-feely health and safety with it. I mean, literally, you'd have a grown man slamming 7-year-old children into the mat, being their ukis, And I started with judo, and I actually loved it, even though I got smashed about regularly. And my mom would turn up at the school gates and say, "Stop beating my son up! He's coming back in pieces," and only to beat me up later. But I started my martial arts journey and really enjoyed it, and just got myself engaged in it, and just continued moving through and changing to different martial arts and trying all sorts of things, which is pretty much where it got me to where I then decided, okay, I now want to get into the professional, security industry. But prior to that, I did a number of different jobs. One of my first jobs was selling double glazing door to door.
Teaches you a lot.
Horrific, but
teaches you a lot.
Yeah, I'd literally get picked up because when I got thrown out of home at the age of 17, I lived in a sort of squat in southeast London, just outside Catford. And I went and did this job because it was one of the few jobs I had or could get. And I'd be picked up in a minibus in Hendon with a bunch of other guys, dropped off into various different neighbourhoods in northeast London, which were generally pretty shit. And, I don't want to be rude about North London, but they were shit. And then there's me knocking on the door with my posh public school accent.
Boy.
Hello, love to introduce you. I'd like to entice you to get some double glazing. And they'd be looking at me like, who the fuck is this guy? Get him out. And I was like, okay. And it was hilarious, but I was making 50 quid a week.
Yeah.
And then like 30 quid of that was going on my rent of sorts. 10 quid would go on my travel pass, and I had literally 10 quid to live on. I've never eaten so much fucking bread in my life. Literally, I mean, you just eat bread. And then, I then moved into another sales role. And I think doing sales jobs was fascinating. I learned an awful lot. I did a lot of cold calling. Worked for dodgy publications that would say, this is the International Business Journal, and literally was utter nonsense. And it was purely to generate advertising revenue. And I met the most incredibly funny characters. I mean, you could have written a sitcom about it and not believed some of these personalities that were there. And then really still practicing my martial arts. I then ended up sort of going overseas, doing a bit of traveling. Did a bit of bodyguarding when I was in, and this is bodyguarding. This is not close protection as we would call it now. This was literally, if someone's coming close to your principal, you'd batter them. And I ended up, and it really wasn't.
Keep it simple.
It wasn't any more sophisticated than that. It really was, and get pull your principal out. And then it was sort of around a time that I was at a lunch, and I met over this lunch this boyfriend of a female friend of mine who was an ex-para. And he turned around to me and he said, I've been teaching self-defense at a local sort of community center, and you study martial arts and stuff. Would you come down and have a look? And he didn't really have any training. It was literally thump and run stuff. And I said, yeah, I'd love to. So I went down with him and we had a look at, what he was teaching these girls. And it was pretty basic. And I said, well, look, okay, you could throw a few things in. You could do this, you could do this, you could do this. And he and I then formed a partnership and created my first company, which was called CSD, or Corporate Self-Defense, which was basically providing personal safety training to women in corporations.
Okay.
And the idea was, you have a lot of companies where, the biggest challenge would be getting women to come from work to go to a facility or a site to do training. And it's then hiring that facility. So the idea that we came up with was we'd actually train them in the boardrooms of their own offices. So they didn't have to go anywhere. They could literally just sort of come from their desk, wander over.
Good idea.
And we teach them all in their normal clothes. And the reasoning for that was, if you were ever going to use it, you're not going to be wearing a tracksuit on your sneakers. You're going to be wearing your heels. You're going to be wearing a skirt. You're going to be, wearing the stuff which would restrict you.
So you had them all dressed up in heels and skirts?
Well, no, that was just me and Mark. and that was generally only on the weekends, but it slipped. And we
size
did that.
12's high heels.
Exactly, yeah, size 12. How do you know my size? So yeah, that was, and it was really. I mean, Mark and I, unfortunately, we fell out in the end, but. At the very beginning, it was so much fun.
Yeah.
We had such a laugh.
Yeah, I bet.
And literally, we had not a penny to throw into the business. We actually had so little money. We were cycling from meeting to meeting. And back in those days, cycling wasn't cool. I mean, that was poor people.
Yeah.
And we'd cycle to all these meetings. And we managed to obtain some really big clients.
Yeah.
And there was one particular guy who turned out to be quite a legend, as it was, in the security industry, who was the head of security for this big conglomerate, who Mark and I walk in looking like a couple of cheeky chappies, going, this is what we can do. And he's going, right. And he somehow took some faith in us and said, okay, let's give it a go. And I said, look, I'll tell you what, we'll do it for free. If you like it, then let's book a whole bunch more. Yeah. And if you don't like it, you've lost nothing, and you won't lose any people in the process. So he said, sure. So we went in and we did that. And then literally it was a question of building the client base by then going to all their competitor companies and going, well, we're doing it for X, Y, Z. So why don't you do it? And people, as we know, are somewhat sheeple. They will follow others. So it was a really, even for us, a kind of a cunning way of basically engaging so we just ended up then focusing on all the companies that had a very high female demographic, like advertising agencies, marketing companies, that sort of thing. So we'd get Saatchi & Saatchi and Bates Dorland and Ogilvy and Mather, and then we'd go into other ones and say, well, we're doing it for Saatchi and we're doing it for Ogilvy.
Come on board.
And they go, oh yeah, fine. And they get that warm, comfy feel.
Yeah, fantastic. And how many years did that run for?
That ran for about 3 years, till about 1994, I think.
And why did you and your partner split?
In respect of him, we fell out badly, and I don't want to be too harsh about it. He had a bit of a mental health issue at the time, and he just had a bit of a meltdown. Okay. So we ended up. It was very acrimonious, the split. And I haven't heard from him since. So I'm sure he's fine. Or I'd like to hope he is. But yeah, we fell out. I mean, I've had many fallouts over the years. That's one of those ones which, to be honest, I think I heard you on one of your other podcasts, Dodge, saying everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely.
And I think that was the reason for me then to build the business and build my brand and develop from there. And that's when ICP, the company that I still have today, was formulated. And I had a tiny little office on Victoria Street in London. And then I had a couple of really dodgy people who were working for me. But one of the key persons right at the very beginning that sort of built and developed and mentored me was a guy who was ex-22 SAS, real legend. He was actually a troop leader for Andy McNabb.
Really? His name? What's his name?
I'd be hesitant to say, but John. I'll say that much. Okay. So if there's any regiment guys who are listening, they'll probably know. Okay.
What's his surname?
Nice try, Dodge. Nice try. But John was a really good friend. Yeah. He was an incredible martial artist as well. So he and I had that very much in common. We trained together. But we liked training in the park. I mean, he broke my ribs a few times. I mean, he was a big old unit. Yeah. But his story was fascinating because he'd actually, when he joined the SAS, he had actually been in the British Taekwondo team. And he kept it entirely to himself. And then he developed a thing called the Close Combat Club, because the very early days of the SAS, they didn't really have a very good hand-to-hand system in place. I mean, these days, the likes of Staz and Ollie and all those guys, it's all jiu-jitsu based, and there's a lot of that, and Jocko Willink's a big exponent of that. But back in those days, I believe it was Shotokan karate, which was all they had.
It was called what, sorry?
Shotokan.
Okay.
Shotokan karate. And a lot of the guys were trying it out, and it wasn't working when they actually put it into battle testing. And John brought TKD, and he would tell the most hilarious stories about basically all of the guys would get together in the gym on a Friday or a Saturday night and just rip into each other and just experiment and build stuff and develop it and everything else. And so John and I would train together, and we'd have an awful lot of fun, smashing each other about. But also, he taught me an awful lot about the industry, and I definitely would not have got to where I am today.
Without
I don't think without John. Yeah,
all happens for a reason, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it?
Everyone's a contact.
Absolutely, without question.
I got taught that as a kid from a very young age. Everyone you meet is a contact.
Yeah.
It's so true. So tell me your journey then with ICP moving forwards over the last 20 odd years.
Yeah, it's 25 odd years.
25 years, yeah.
So started off obviously with the personal protection, and then I was emptying out Hereford and Poole of bodies to help, because we started building a lot.
So you were going to the SAS in Hereford, and you're going to the SBS in Poole.
Yeah, there was a guy
use those.
Yeah,
guys.
so there was a guy called Wally who used to be the resettlements guy for both Hereford and Poole, and also for 14 Intelligence, the precursor to Special Reconnaissance these days. And Wally was a great contact, and he would literally say, right, I've got Fred, Bill, Harry, they've just finished, they've just done, would you like to come and, would you like them to come and work? And I'd say, yeah, please, I need a couple of guys, get them down for a couple of weeks or a couple of days or whatever it might be. And I met loads and loads of lovely guys. Some of them I can mention because they've passed on now, people like, he was a real hero. Who else? Who was fascinating, a hilarious guy. And he was a guy who tried to attempt to do the world's highest skydive. And just an absolute charmer. And then there's a bunch of other guys that you'd meet who were real sort of soul stealers, absolute death dealers. And they were quite terrifying when they'd come in the room. And then I'd have paras, and I'd have Royal Marines, and I'd have Royal Engineers, and all sorts that would mix in. And as it built, what would happen is the clients would turn around and say, well, look, you've trained our executives how to not get kidnapped or how to remain safe when they're overseas. They're going to Mexico. They're going to Pakistan. They're going to Colombia. Could you send someone with them? So I had this kind of battalion almost of guys, which I'd say, great, off you go. And many of these guys would have come from Protective Wing. So they had the experience of looking after VIPs. But then there's this whole thing of toning it down, and it still prevails today, of toning down what someone would have done in their previous role, either protecting royalty or protecting MPs or military commanders, that they have to scale it down from the hard skills to the soft skills. And the soft skills are 99% of the job. Absolutely. The hard skills, you've got to have them, but they only kick in really when it all goes horribly squirrely, which it shouldn't.
And is that like a 99%? Everything's good. 1%. All of a sudden, you might be doing 30 days on the job, and all of a sudden, that 1 hour it kicks off. Yeah,
I mean, I'd say security is 99% boredom, 1% excitement.
Okay.
I mean, it's more. I mean, going back to the days when I was, 18, 19, 20, and it really was incredibly crude. It's a very, very intrinsically detailed service. People think it's just a big lump turning up. There's so much planning that goes into it. Every inch of their journey, every element of where they're staying, who they're meeting with, all sorts of things like that, are all form part of that whole sort of protective coverage. And it's not just a guy there, wielding a gun. The number of times where I've used a gun or carried a gun have been very few, and it's only been in hostile environments. And I would generally say that unless you really do need to have weapons, try and ensure you have an operation that doesn't require it. And the simple reason being is that the moment you introduce guns to the equation, you're immediately upping the ante. Unless you're in somewhere like Iraq or Afghanistan or somewhere where there's such a proliferation of weapons and such a availability of them.
Do you own a firearm in the UK?
I don't. No,
you don't.
Yeah, I used to, but then it was after the Dunblane incident that all the Section 1 firearms licenses, where we'd have pistols, and there was never automatics. They were always semi-automatic if you had anything. And yeah, when that happened, we all had to get rid of them here in the United Kingdom, because the whole idea was that would remove, obviously, organised crime getting their hands on weapons. That didn't quite work.
No, it didn't, did it?
No.
Well, give me an example of some celebrities you worked for.
I generally don't mention celebrities, Dodge. The reason being is, there was a Sunday Times or Saturday Times magazine article that was about that was done on me. And the first thing that everybody asks is, they say, which celebrities have you worked for? Yeah. And unless there's a photograph of me with them, I won't actually say who I've looked after. And even if there is a picture of me with them, I'm not necessarily always going to confirm that I was actually on task for them. You've got to be super discreet in this game. I mean, it's something which any of the sort of old and the bold like me cringe horrendously at. It's when we see photographs basically out there of bodyguards who are doing selfies or jumping in front of the camera on the red carpet and just trying to make themselves, and then posting all sorts of stuff all over on their Instagram. I say that because I do have a couple of celebrities on my Instagram. Who
are they?
I've got Paris Hilton, who was lovely.
There we go. We got one out of
There you go. You got one.
Come on.
But we're
warming him up, people.
That wasn't a protective detail, actually. That was something else entirely. And Paris was lovely. She was such a sweet girl.
Where were you doing that? In the UK?
Yeah, it was in the UK. Okay. And she came bowling over. It was about 3 a.m. and said, Will, can I get a photograph with you? Because we just finished working on a project together. And I said, yeah, sure. And did one with her. And then I think the only other celebrity I've got on there is Ava Herzegovina. I will let up to that one. And that was during her glory days as the Wonder Bra model.
Okay, well, there you go. And, that's a good one to have on there, isn't it?
And she was lovely. She was really sweet. And it really does go. I mean, you'll know this, Dodge. Yeah. It still prevails to this day. The celebrities that you expect to be nice are generally horrible.
Really?
And the ones you expect to be horrible turn out to be really nice.
Yeah. We were chatting about that
Would
before,
you agree?
weren't we? I do agree.
Yeah?
I do agree. When you're so close with someone, protecting them, is there ever a moment you're getting so close that it could just go over the line?
Are you talking about of the opposite sex?
Yes, the opposite sex. Because you're working really close with them, right?
Yeah.
And if you know that they're single and they like you, you like them, is there any point that you've been in a situation where you're thinking, oh my God, something could happen here?
Yeah, to say it hasn't been something where you've gone, ooh, would be a lie. They're usually the short-sighted ones, obviously. But the thing is, the moment you cross that line is the moment it's all over. Yeah. Your career's over. Yeah. Unless you're going to get married and have kids and retire from the industry, it's really not worth it. No, okay. And, and sexual harassment does happen. I know a number of I had it. I know how remarkable that might sound.
Well, you've had sexual harassment against you.
Yeah.
Explain.
The thing is you've got to remember that it's not necessarily any of this. Yeah. It's the capacity that you're fulfilling, that you are a protector. And, I can't speak for every woman, but a lot of women are looking for a protector. And if they don't have a protector in their life, whether that be a father, a partner, someone friendly, whoever it is, it's very easy to see your close protection officer as that protector, as that person who's going to protect them from the big old world. And one of the things I found with female celebrities is they always tend to end up with douchebag boyfriends. I mean, I had one particular case where I won't say who it is, obviously, but she's very well known. She'd been with this douchebag boyfriend who basically she'd sent him some very intimate pictures of herself. He then turned around when they split up and said, I want 50 grand or I'm going to put them online. Yeah. So I had to go and have a word with him. And I managed to get the pictures back and obviously it was all resolved. But I turned around to her and I said, what were you doing with this guy? And I've had this conversation with a number of beautiful, stunning, talented, female celebrities. And they say, the problem, Will, is that because of who I am or my image or my persona, nice guys are too intimidated to come and talk to me because they will presume that I'm with someone. Yeah. Yet it's the douchebag, and every woman will know this, having gone into a bar.
We've all got hope, haven't we? We've all got hope.
There's all hope for us. But everyone will know this, that there is always those characters in a bar, in a nightclub, who will just keep coming, until...
Ask 100, one will say yes.
Exactly. Or ask that girl 100 times, and she may say yes.
Yeah.
And they get lonely, like everybody else. And they just end up going, well... None of the nice guys are asking me. This guy is.
Yeah, he showed me some attention.
Yeah, and it's really kind of sad actually, because a lot of celebrities do feel incredibly isolated because they've got to be careful what they say, where they go, what they do. If they've got a bit of spinach in their teeth and all that malarkey. Not a life I'd want personally.
Give me an example of what you actually do in close protection bodyguarding for a celebrity, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed.
Well, that's a really good way of putting it, because we call it heads off pillow, head on pillow.
Yeah.
So that's where your job generally will start. Hopefully, depending on the situation, you may have a team overnight that's watching over the celebrity and obviously making sure that they can sleep well. And obviously, you as a CP officer, an executive protection officer, you can't stay up all night. You've got to get your head down as well. So you hope you're not with one of these, clients, and that could be a corporate client. It doesn't have to be a celebrity, who will want to go out clubbing till 5 a.m, and nightmares. I've had a few of them. But what will happen is the moment you get up in the morning, you will already have hopefully you have a good relationship with their personal assistant or executive assistant. They'll be telling you what the schedule is for the day. Yeah. Quite often when you've seen the client into their room, the last thing of the day, you'd say, okay, what time, boss, do you want us in the morning? They have your number so they can call you. But you'd be up a good hour at least before. And that could be first parade of the vehicles. So if they're, whoever's going to be doing the driving that day, you'd get them well in advance. You'd want to make sure you're checking the car, checking the tire pressures, oil, water, cabin, everything else. I mean, for me, and I know for a lot of other guys, it's even down to what type of water they want. If it's Fiji water or it's Evian, and you make sure it's there. I had one...
Peckham Springs?
Peckham Springs is my favourite.
Lovely one.
I had one particular client who was a big smoker.
Yeah.
And I would carry literally about 5 packets of cigarettes on me and about 5 different lighters, because inevitably I'd give him a packet, he'd take one cigarette, light it, never see the packet of cigarette or the lighter ever again. So it's like resupply. So you go to all the detail. You make sure the hotel's good. You make, depending on again who the client is. I mean, I've had some former heads of state, some royal family members, a foreign royal family, not domestic, who you'll then be doing advances. You'll be looking at the route. You'll be looking at, how you're going to be getting from A to B and C and D, and making sure that there's no changes to what you've already done. If you've got a good enough team, you'll be sending people to run that route to make sure that there aren't any surprises or emergency roadworks or horrible traffic that you didn't anticipate. So, if a client's coming into a country and I'm already there on the ground, I'll be driving back and forth from the hotel or the office to the airport at various different times to just check and confirm that nothing has changed. Do all the pre-advanced check-in. So literally as the principal arrives, they literally come all the way through, depending on if they're going private or commercial. Yeah. And that they arrive, there's their card key, the room's already been checked, it's already at the temperature that they want. Yeah. All
so when you say you check the room, are you looking for cameras in the room?
Yeah.
How do you find a camera in the room, hidden cameras? What are you looking for?
Well, there are some tools you can use. I mean, for any kind of what they call TSCM or technical surveillance countermeasures, which is debugging. Yeah. You will either have a lot of very expensive equipment, things like an Oscar Blue, Oscar Green, a lot of the technology that's developed to, some of the watchers, listeners of this want to have a look at REI technology. They're probably at the very pinnacle in terms of some of this technology. They provide it to the CIA, to government agencies, for embassies, that sort of thing. So I've got a team who have all that capability. It's about 200 grand's worth of kit.
Is that right?
Yeah, really expensive. But you can also get sort of basic IR equipment as well. Which
IR stands for?
Infrared.
Okay.
So you can actually scan it around the room to actually see if there are any lenses. Now, if they're tiny lenses, the light will bounce off the lens. So you will be able to see as the laser
Where would someone normally put a hidden camera? In a clock, or is it in a light, or what? Is there something that stands out for you?
There's no one particular place. It really depends on the environment they're putting it into. So was it easy for them to get in and put it in, or is it difficult? Yeah. How long they need it to be in there will depend on whether it has its own independent power supply or whether it needs to be mains fed and main power supply. And then when you're looking at it, you need to be thinking, okay, where would be the ideal place for that camera to be to capture, or that recording device to capture that information. So you wouldn't put it in a bathroom. You'd put it in maybe the bedroom. You might put it into the suite area where the client may be holding meetings. So they may be getting people up. So, I mean, I've had enough clients who've been really concerned about, the potential eavesdropping on conversations that they'll have all their meetings on their jet.
Okay.
So literally pull people up onto their jet, and that's it.
Because you don't carry a firearm in the UK, give me 5 things that you would like to carry on you.
My everyday carries?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would say a tactical pen. It's really good. You can buy, if you Google search, you can find one of those. It's a steel pen. It's a pen, so you can use it. I did a thing for Unilat where I did this thing about close protection. And, that was one of the bits of kit that I talked about. But it's also very solid. If you strike someone into the sternum, that's going to keep them at bay.
What else could you use it for?
All sorts of things. I mean, there are lots of courses out there on how to use, what they call a kubotan, which is illegal, but it's a specific metal tool which you could potentially use as a weapon. But a tactical pen, obviously, is inert. It's a pen. So that's how you kind of circumvent that legal aspect.
So if you got caught with that by the police, you could actually say, this is a pen.
Yeah, you'd be fine.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you'd be absolutely fine.
Okay.
But it's very good. I mean, and people could say it's for breaking glass in their car window or whatever to affect an emergency escape. There's all sorts of things. A tactical torch, absolutely, probably one of the most valuable pieces that I could suggest.
Well, like a big sort of Koch torch?
No, a short one. So not like the big old mag lights. Steel one, but probably only about that long.
Yeah.
So it's easily concealable. Yeah. So you can literally carry it on you, and it's not going to sort of bulk out.
Yeah. Where do you keep that? Down your...
Oh, you're just pleased to see me, Don.
Pleased to see you. So
no, it's my tactical torch.
So you would use that for, you're saying it's such an important tool for you. What would you use that for?
So in the same way as the tactical pen, you could use it to strike. But you need to get it above 2,000 lumen in terms of its power.
Okay.
And the most effective thing is the strobe light.
Okay.
So, I actually have one in my car. I could bring it down later and show you. Literally, you flash this into someone's eyes, you will blind them.
Is that right?
And which is enough for you to get away. I've used it where we've come out of locations where there's lots of photographers, and you blind all the irises. So, you can ruin all their photographs.
Okay.
I remember in a certain sandy part of the world that I was in for a while, that when you had Alibaba coming up alongside to try and hijack you, you'd strobe the driver and their car would go
see ya.
Yeah. I mean, it's inert, but it's incredibly powerful, and it could buy you those few seconds to escape a situation. So a tactical torch is definitely useful.
Amazing. How much is something like that?
Probably about 70 quid for a decent one. Yeah. Okay. I'm not getting paid by them, but Claris do a good one. Yeah. That's Claris with a K. Yeah. If you go on Amazon, you can find a good one. But the most important thing is the lumen count. Make sure it's at least 2,000.
Okay. If
you get above 2,000, 2,500, 3,000.
And you'll blind someone for a good 3-4 seconds?
Yeah, easily.
Wow.
Yeah. Literally, I will show you later.
Yeah.
And you'll be going...
Yeah,
and I can't see anything, and that's enough, for a woman, even and for a man, for a personal protection tool. Brilliant, just buys you that window.
Brilliant. Number 3.
Number 3, I would say, would be a personal attack alarm.
What women carry with them,
and what men should carry with them,
and men should carry with them as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, the type I'm talking about is the type which is like like a grenade. It has a pin. So not the type that you will just literally press the top,
button and it's really loud.
Or it's got an aerosol. And the reason being is, you can't test it regularly to make sure it's actually working. So, I mean, I know someone who had one and it just went,
yeah.
That was it. Yeah, exactly. Not so great. But if it's battery operated, then you can test it, replace the batteries. The joy is you pull the pin out and it's still going. You don't have to be holding it down.
Right, okay.
So if you've got a bandit who's trying to attack you, he'll just rip it out of your hand and throw it over a fence or a wall, and it's. But as soon as your fingers come off, that's it. Okay. It's not going anymore. So you want one which you can pull the pin out, stick it on your belt loop or whatever like that, and you've got your hands free to protect yourself. Okay. Or you drop it at your feet, and then they're confused as to do they deal with you, deal with that, deal with that, whatever. But why I like it is not only is it good I mean, also the other technique I was talking about with someone the other day is that if you see someone who's in a situation, lob it in like a grenade.
Yeah.
So you will actually create disorientation and confusion for the attackers.
Just how loud it is.
So you're not going over and getting stuck in.
Yeah.
And God knows you could end up getting hurt yourself. Yeah. If you want to help, just pull the pin, throw it over at them. That will draw the attention of other people to what's going on.
Okay.
And for the assailant, more than likely going to throw them completely and they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Am I dealing with that? Dealing with them? Dealing with that? Dealing with that?
Yeah.
But I've used them probably more when I've been traveling in various parts of the world, whether it be for work or whether it be for pleasure, where if you're not sure about the integrity of the security of your room in the hotel or the lodgings, wherever you're staying, that you can actually fix one piece to one side of the door frame, the strap onto the actual door itself or the other side. And if someone pushes open the door while you're fast asleep, it's an intruder alarm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Next one?
Oh my God! Right,
putting you under pressure. Really.
You are. Trying to think. What's the next one?
What's the next one?
So yeah, sprays. So
what, like as in CS gas?
Well, yeah, you can't.
Is that illegal?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Only in this country or worldwide?
No, in this country.
In this country. Okay.
So CS gas, pepper gas, any of those types of gases are illegal. They fall under what we call the Section 5 firearm offence. And if you get caught with one of those, you can do time.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Same with stun guns as well. Yeah. You get caught with one of those, you could be easily doing time.
What, 2-3 years?
Easily. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Easily.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would, and I've had a lot of friends, female friends who've said, oh, my boyfriend, partner, whatever, brought me back some pepper gas from France. Because you can buy it across the counter in France. Yeah. And in a lot of other European countries.
So you can buy it across the counter in France, but it's illegal in England?
Yeah. Yeah. What did the EU ever do for us?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, it's illegal. And also the other problem is if you're laying too much responsibility on it, it's kind of like it's the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
And you can't always rely that it's going to be there to save you. And if you use it, I've had it used on me in an offensive way. So someone attacking me. And the problem is a lot of people start at a distance. And by which time, if they're running or charging towards me with it, then it actually blows back into their own face.
Yeah.
So unless it's the liquid jet, but then you've got to be really accurate.
But can't you do the liquid jet from like 3, 4, 5 meters or something?
You can do, but again, it's how you do it.
Right, okay.
So if you do it up and down or you do it side to side, there's a good chance you could miss them. Only a little bit will hit them. And generally, what I've found with it is it has a little bit of a delayed effect, not enormous amounts, but potentially enough for me to be able to react and respond, to fight out, to punch, to whatever.
Yeah.
But where I would almost use as a legal alternative, and this will make you laugh, will be sort of like handbag hairspray.
Okay.
Handbag size hairspray.
Yeah.
That lacquer is incredibly sort of, it's a coagulant. It sort of will actually gel together. But it's very important that you're going for the airwaves, you're going for the mouth, you're going for the eyes, you're going for the nose. Yeah. Don't bother with anywhere else, because what you want to do is basically confuse them. And again, it's literally only for a couple of seconds to buy that time to get you out of that
What's
situation.
What's that feeling like having pepper spray or CS gas?
Not nice.
No. Is it a stun for how long? Because I've seen people been sprayed before and they're all over the place. How long does it last for?
Oh, you're snot and tears for a good 20 minutes, half an hour, depending on how much they've delivered into your face.
Yeah.
And the key thing is just to get water. I mean, there was a mate of mine the other day. We've got a nasty spate in West London of street robberies going on right now, a lot of watch robberies. And a mate of mine was literally getting into his car. It was 8 o'clock in the evening. And this guy's tried to grab his watch off him and then sprayed him in the face. And he called me up and said, Will, I could just about see your number here. And he was like, what shall I do? I've lost my watch. And I said, just lots of water, mate, lots of saline. Yeah. Just chuck it on there and let it go. But don't touch your face, whatever you do. Don't touch your face, don't rub. It's only going to make it worse because you're pushing it into the pores then.
Yeah. Tell me some stories when you've gone abroad. Are you allowed to carry firearms in other countries?
Yeah, certain countries.
What countries are you allowed to carry?
So there would be countries like, for example, Latin America as a continent, Africa, certain parts of Africa. Nigeria, you can't as a Westerner, and you have to rely on locals. I mean, I remember one horrendous time. I wasn't there, thankfully, at the time. A lot of security companies operating, I think it was in Lagos at the time, and there's a quite well-known curry restaurant. And a lot of these guys, you're talking the, real, hard guys, sat around, everybody was in this place. And a gang come in with firearms and literally rob everybody, and nobody could do anything about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's horrific. But in other parts of Africa, yes, you can. Iraq, Afghanistan, yes. Certain parts of Pakistan, you can. Southeast Asia, certain parts, Latin America. Those are generally the places.
When you're there, do you get your firearm when you're in the country?
Yes. Yeah. So you arrive and you either have your fixer sorted out for you, and then you're obviously provided with it, and you go from there. Like when we first went into Iraq, for example, as a private military company, and looking after a number of sort of major corporates that were trying to rebuild in the country. I tried to organise with Colt over in the States, getting M4s and speaking with Heckler and Koch to get MP5s, and literally was an absolute nightmare. And the easiest option for us was to go into the gun markets and just buy a shed ton of AKs, Makarovs, Tauruses, very, very simple. Although it got a little out of hand. So I went down on one occasion to meet with my team, and we had a hotel floor in the middle of Basra, which was set up as our sort of ops centre. So it had, the billets, the sleeping quarters, had a rec room, had the armoury. And I said to the guy, the TL, when I got down there, I said, so when I turned up, they said, boss, get your head down, have a sleep. And I went, no. Armory first. And they went, no, boss, honestly. I went, no, armory first. Yeah. And we go to the armory, and literally there should only be a few AKs, maybe 20 or so. Yeah. Get in there, it's about 50. There's about 5 RPGs. I'm like, what the fuck are you guys doing? You're preparing for a war here. And they went, well, they were on special, sir.
Yeah, quality. Well, tell me about Pakistan. Is that a really dodgy country? Tell me about Nigeria, because I've heard all sorts about Nigeria as well. You've mentioned some countries here are really places that are very different to the world we live in. Do you feel protected when you're there, even though you're protecting people? Do you feel that you're very much more vulnerable in these situations than you would be in the UK?
Depending on how I'm capacitated. So if I'm going down there on my own, then yes, you can feel a little bit exposed and hanging out. Yeah. I would rarely do that. I'd at least go with one other. If you're with a big old team, you make sure that you've got good local resource. So you're getting that intel. So like in Iraq, that hearts and minds piece, so essential, because you get the local intelligence. Yeah. Whatever we can do from our desktops here in the UK is only going to give us a limited picture. You need to actually speak to the people on the ground. So the most important thing, like in Basra, was the locals to keep them on side was essential, because if there was a planned attack, then they would give you the heads up because they'd know about it. I mean, a good example of that was when I was in Afghanistan. I went out to one of the forward operating bases called Geddes, which is in the Helmand. And I was down there in that capacity for the government, just doing some sort of basically welfare, health and safety. Sounds very boring, but it was quite good fun. And one of the things I looked at was the LRWs, and these are locally recruited workers. So local Afghanis who are working on camp, providing all sorts of things, cooking, ablutions, that sort of thing. And I wanted to go and have a look at their facilities, and their facilities were lacking, to put it mildly. And I basically put in my report and said, right, they need to have proper showers, proper ablutions block, proper fire pit for them to cook their pitta and everything else. And they were really grateful, because I was the first person actually down there to say, these guys, let's give a shit about these guys, because we got to look after them. Yeah. And then literally it was about a week later, one of them came over to me and he said, boss, just thought I'd give you the heads up. We know that there's a local gang who's going to try and attack the camp tonight. And I went, thanks, buddy, appreciate it. So I then go over to the CO, the commanding officer on the camp, and said, just had word from one of the LRWs that there's going to be a planned attack on the camp tonight. And he said, thanks very much, Will. And I said, great. Nothing happened, sadly, because I did say, can I grab a weapon out of the armory if it
one of the
happen?
50.
And he said, dig out, Will. No, this is an Afghan. So would have been out of the British Army armory, so the quartermaster. But he turned around to me and said, yeah, sure, of course again, if we get under attack.
So give me an example, a celebrity, a high worth net individual, whoever it may be in the UK, comes to you and says, I want to work with you, how do you charge them?
A lot.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. But how do you charge? Is it a day rate? Is it a job rate? Is it a...
It could be any one of those. So it could be an hourly rate. So depending on what the task is. So if it's consulting, if it's wandering around their home, their office to advise on what better security they should have there, then that might be, very cheap, very quick, very dirty and easy. If it's a big corporate headquarters, if it's reviewing their own security. I mean, I've done a few audits on close protection teams that are already in place. That doesn't make me an incredibly popular man, as you can imagine. I think one of my worst occasions was walking into a room of 20 bodyguards and telling them they were all sacked. I moved pretty damn quick out that door, let me tell you, straight after.
Who gave you the command to do that?
The client.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I got into big trouble in Saudi Arabia, I can tell you this story, where I was doing a review. This was in the wake of the Al Hamra attack in 2003. And if you recall, they actually made a movie of it called Kingdom with Jamie Foxx, and it was a compound, residential compound, which came under attack by Al Qaeda. They turned up at the front gate, they killed the guards, came in, shot loads of people as they drove through, drove down to where there was a barbecue and a pool area, and then detonated 2 VBIEDs, vehicle-borne improvised explosive devices, and it killed about 35 people, and it was horrific. And in the wake of that, my client at the time said, I need you to go down and have a look at all these residential compounds and just see whether the security is good enough. And I actually went to the Al Hamra compound and actually saw the bomb site. It was horrific. And, the poor guy, the general manager who ran the compound was still in shock. And he was like, he should have been shipped out, get someone else in here straight away because this guy's going to be just PTSD'd to the max. Anyway, I went round and there was one particular compound which was very, very, very well known, very expensive, probably the most expensive compound in the kingdom, and the owner was very prominent. That's as much as I'll say, but a very well-known name. And he'd had some shitty US consultant, and I say shitty because he really hadn't done his job, and there was holes everywhere, exposures everywhere, and I came in and I wrote this report up for the client and just basically said, this place is like a fucking teabag. It's got so many holes in it. I can't give it my blessing to say it's safe enough. And there's nothing we can do about it. The client, although the document was supposed to be for their eyes only, decides then, in their infinite wisdom and fury, to then send it over to the property management company that actually ran that compound. Next thing I get is a letter from the personal office of this very prominent person who says, you are no longer welcome in the kingdom. And I'm like, fuck, if I go back, I'm going to get thrown into prison. So I think, no bullshit to this. Yeah. So I send a letter back with a copy of the report and an explanatory sort of addendum to say, no, you should be sacking your security advisor because he hasn't done a good enough job. And he is putting your people, your guests, at risk. And you're wide open. I had a similar one I'll come to in a moment, where I've given my advice. I'm not always right, Dodge. And literally a while later, I still got this letter framed on my wall in the office. I get a letter back that says, thank you very much, Mr. Geddes. We've now reviewed this situation. We would welcome you back into the kingdom. I'm like, brilliant. Fuck that, I'm still not going.
Oh, yeah. Quality.
But I remember I had another one. There was the Telegraph, I think it was, the arts critic said to me, Will, we'd love to have a look at the security of all the major museums in London. So there's the British Museum, the V&A, the Wallace Collection, and the National Gallery, I think it was. And I said, yeah, fine. It was just an impromptu sort of clandestine sort of job. So I literally went in there, looked around, made my own thoughts, came back. And I came back with one which was on the V&A. And I said, yeah, they're wide open. And they turned around to me and so the journalist, lovely woman, said, thank you very much, Will. She obviously passed those comments over to all the museums and with an open invitation, which I said, look, at no charge, I'll happily come in and discuss my findings. Yeah. Hopefully that'll be helpful. Yeah. And most of them were all really well, very receptive to it. The V&A turned around and said, fuck off. What do you know? And I'm like, okay. And the journalist goes to print. 2 months later, they had a big robbery.
Did they?
Yeah. Go figure, eh?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's because I'm not there to try and humiliate or upset or embarrass anybody.
You're doing what you're
doing my job.
Absolutely.
And happy to share the thoughts,
Absolutely.
and I'm not going to charge.
Have you had any trouble or been involved in any gangsters in the UK?
Yes.
You have?
I have. And yeah, it's a very difficult subject. It's a very difficult subject. Protecting someone against gangsters is a tough job.
Yeah.
Because it goes back to the question you asked earlier, Dodge. If you are in an environment where you can fight on an even playing field, they've got guns, you've got guns, we all know what's going to potentially happen. If you're in an environment where you're not armed and the other side is, then you're in a really uneven fight. And I would say, number one, I wouldn't want to put myself in that position. But number two, I wouldn't want to put my team in that position.
Yeah.
And I've had a couple of moments where I've just had to go, you know what? You've got to know your limitations.
Yeah.
And I'll readily put my hand up and say, I know my limitations on that one. So I think a lot of the old school gangsters, they fight it out amongst themselves. They don't pick fights with the civvies. I mean, you've interviewed enough of these guys.
Absolutely.
There is a kind of code to a certain extent.
There's a London code, there's a Manchester code, there's a British code in that gangster world.
Yeah. So if I got engaged to look after someone who was at risk to, gangster retaliation, if it's a high level gangster, no, I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. Although having said that, I did have one case. This is years ago. This is like in the mid 90s. For one of the big record labels. Again, I can't say who. And they'd, you probably know more about the music industry than I do, but the way they run it, they have an A&R department who will sign various acts, and then they're on the label and they'll produce them and create their albums and that sort of thing. Anyway, they had this one particular the A&R who'd come in, and this A&R was the new guy. And he literally went through all the signings book and went, okay, keep them, lose them, keep them, lose them. And one of the bands that he decided to lose was this like gangster rap gang sort of band up in Manchester. So anyway, these kids had obviously gone, yeah, we've hit the big time. We're one of the big major labels, da-da-da-da-da. And then all of a sudden they get the call going, you're dumped. And they're like, fuck. So the next thing they're doing is they're turning around and going, fuck you, we're coming down. We're going to shoot up your reception, kill your A&R guy and burn the building down. So I get this frantic phone call from my client who says, well, we just had this threat. What can we do? So I went, fine, no problems at all. And this was back in the days with Wally as the guy, and John was around as well. And I remember bumping into my client, a lovely woman who's since retired. And she turns around and she says, Will, to this day, I can still remember the minibus turning up with all these guys with tashes like this, all wearing Timberlands, all wearing North Face fleeces, all wearing jeans. And on the side of the minibus, it said Hereford taxis.
Oh, no. Quality.
So literally, these guys were supposed to blister into the background with all these really cool music people. And he just got a couple of lumps, sat like that.
Tell me, you've come like I guess a celebrity on TV.
Have I?
You have. And you're always on talking about terrorism and everything going on in the world. Tell me that little journey you've been on, because it's been quite exciting, I'd have thought.
The TV stuff?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was trying to remember this the other day. It was one particular interview where I got a call, and I don't know how it came through, from the BBC to talk about it was the Rebecca... Hang on, no, what's David Beckham's wife? What's her name?
Posh Spice.
Posh Spice, Victoria.
That's all I need to know.
Posh. There was a kidnap threat against Posh that the Sun or the News of the World had uncovered. And I got a call. Oh, mate, I've still got some of those recordings I've kept. They're absolutely freaking horrendous. I mean, literally, if I ever want to bring myself a few rungs down, I'll watch one of these and just go. And I went on to the BBC, and for some mad reason, I obviously said something that they thought was interesting enough to invite me back.
Yeah.
And then inevitably, you jump about from station to station. And I was like, yeah, fine. And I got a lot of jip when I first started doing it from guys in the industry.
Really?
Yeah. So from my peers, and they were like, fucking Geddes up there again, talking about this, that, and the other, and he's talking bollocks, and I probably was, but the general public obviously seemed to enjoy it and seemed to make some sense from it. But it was, as a marketing tool, fantastic.
Absolutely.
Couldn't knock
For your
it.
profile, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd love to say, Dodge, that my clients, and there are, I have a good number of them, will, when they have a drama, will go, got a cool Will.
Yeah.
But I'm realistic and modest, I hope, enough to realize that they will think of the first name that comes to their mind, because usually it's a very intrinsically reactive situation. It's something's happened, wheels have flown off, something's blown up, and they'll go, who do I call? And I'd love to think I was their number one choice, but I know that I'm not. But if my little ugly mug has showed up on Sky News that morning,
it's going to trigger
or on GMB or whatever it might be, they're going to go, oh, cool Will. And I realized how important that was as a tool to basically, does it generate business? Not in a new introductory sense, but it does in terms of just reaffirming and just reminding them. Because a lot of the business is, it's a very people business. And it's about going to meet with people and sitting down and having a cup of coffee, talking shit, and just going, how's your world? What's happening? This is what we've been up to. So you're creating ideas in their minds for solutions. Because people will go, Will's only good for that, or Will's or ICB is only good for that. If you can expand their horizons, they can go, right, okay, we hadn't considered that. We can come to them for that. But it's a very personal business, and it's about having a good engagement and just a good natural interaction,
rapport,
like you and me, Dodge.
Absolutely, it's lovely, isn't it?
I remember there was one occasion where I sat down with this guy, and it rarely happens. I hope to think I get on with most people. And I sat down with this guy, and I knew that I could deliver what he needed, and he knew I could deliver what I needed, but we just didn't like each other. There was just something, go back to that intuition, could just tell we weren't like each other. And I turned around at the end of the meeting, and I said, look, you're a super nice guy. Don't want to waste any more of your time, but we'll call it quits there, shall we? And he said, what, don't you want to provide the business? I said, look, I can detect that you don't particularly like me and vice versa, and you're a nice guy, and I don't disrespect you for that, but I know that this will just end up clashing later down the line, so it's far better. We just, there are plenty of guys out there, and I'll push you to some super guys who'll be able to help you out, or good companies that I know can help you out, but you and I doing this, it's only going to go wrong.
What's that feeling like for you, being known as the real James Bond?
Oh, God, Dodge. Well, I'm beginning to accept it a little more these days. And I mean, I laugh it off, obviously. It makes me chuckle. I mean, I get the piss taken out of me, Sonny Rotten, as you can probably imagine. I don't get it myself, but if people want to use that tag, it's a bit like when I first get, because I'm a Civvy. I'm not ex-SBS, I'm not SAS, I'm not this, that, or the other. I don't come from the conventional backgrounds that most guys come from. So people like to put people in boxes. And
it's quite a nice box to be in, to be fair.
It's a great box. I'm not going to knock it. I think I'm probably more Roger Moore than Daniel Craig, though, to be fair, and probably more that age as well. But yeah, I mean, it's a nice tag.
Maybe Knick-Knack.
Yeah, probably more Knick-Knack or Jaws. Yeah.
Just before we finish off, I'm really interested in what's happening in the world, or what's happening in London with terrorism. Is that slowed down? The things we're having on London Bridge and everything else that was been going on. Is that slowed down over the last couple of years?
Well, that particular year is 2017, I think. Which was when everything happened.
That's
Manchester, PC Palmer, Borough Market, everything, all that crap went down. It hasn't slowed down. Still going on. I've got good friends who are in CT, and they
CT
counterterrorism, and they've said, look, it's still going on. We're still running intercepts. We're still doing surveillance. Still busy as hell. The fact of the matter is that they're very successful at taking these guys down, but it's inevitable. We're going to see another attack, whether it's international terrorism or whether it's far right extremism. We're going to see something. It's never going to go away forever, but people forget about it because obviously a lot of the focus and polarization is on, the Ukraine or stuff, Will Smith smacking Chris Rock.
When something triggers like that on London Bridge, the CT counter-terrorism unit, does everyone get a call straight away? Does everyone get a buzzer straight away saying, this is what's happening, get there straight away?
Yeah.
Are there hundreds in the UK, hundreds of them in London waiting for something to happen?
Yeah. I mean, you've got the firearms teams,
Yeah.
the SO19 boys, and you've got the SFO guys who are all ready, prepped, good to go.
Okay.
And in London, obviously, you can get more guys in very quickly than you can out in the sticks somewhere.
Yeah.
So in the major cities, there are counter-terrorism branches right across the country,
Yeah.
and they are ready to roll.
Yeah.
One of the biggest wake-up calls was with the London terrorist attack in 2005. Which on 7/7, which was the big issue if it was 2005, but it was 7/7 anyway, is that a lot of the comms fell down between British Transport Police, Metropolitan Police, Counter-Terrorism Command, and all of that fell down. And then the next thing happening is basically, everyone's running around like headless chickens to a certain extent. And the police and friends of mine who were heads of various different departments said, Will, that is what happened.
Yeah.
And it caught everybody out. I mean, I pied myself something royally on TV on 7/7, with CNN. And actually, I bumped into Christiane Amanpour the other day, who interviewed me, and I made the biggest fatal mistake ever of saying I don't think it's that when it was.
Right,
Although
okay.
I was reassured later by MI5 friends of mine who turned around and said, actually, we were thinking the same as you, Will.
Yeah.
But everybody got completely thrown by that, regardless of the fact that there are many decades of experience of dealing with terrorism with the provisional IRA. But since then, the communication systems, the triage, the reactions, the responses, everything else, and the protocols have just been so refined and so tested and so drilled that they are pretty damn quick. Good example of that was the character on Streatham High Road in 2019, I think it was. And literally how quickly the team were on him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Really is. Will, I have really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too,
Yeah,
George.
it's been fun.
Sorry, I've just rattled on.
No, mate, it's been real good fun.
Those who know me know that it's difficult to shut me up sometimes.
Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's lovely to hear your story. It's lovely to hear your journey, where you're going now, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I really appreciate you coming down here to the studio. I
really appreciate being honoured and invited onto the show, Dodge. Thank you.
You're a good man.
Appreciate it, sir.
Cheers, Will.
Thank
Take
you.
care, mate.